So we're going to start with a fairly increasing awareness with the chest opener. So we're going to start with our seat on the bolster. The bolster is lengthwise or spine-wise in the center of your mat. And you want to sit at the very lower edge of the bolster. Even if you're short, I know this is generally an instruction for tall people, but you can always slide back. But if you're too far back, it's hard to slide this way when you're on your back. So have a roll at the base. Move your spine back on the bolster. And then once you're gonna feel like, oh yes, I have my hips there, everything's kind of centered, much of my spine is there. Then you lower your head back on the blanket. And before you even kind of tweak the blanket, you might start with, let's get the lower body connected first too, because then we'll know what is going on with the neck. So I'm quite high on the bolster, meaning I'm not on the floor right now with my shoulders very much. They're really stuffed on the bolster. And I like that because it kind of pushes my breathing awareness a little bit higher up. So then we stretch our feet down on that rolled blanket, and your ankles will probably kind of steady. You might have to push your blanket down, and then it'll kind of mess up its design, but that's fine. It's better that the heels are on the blanket, or kind of not just your heel, actually. It's between your heel and your calf. Okay, just that little divot there. You want to place that onto the blanket. Okay, the legs have enough separation that separation will help your back ease. And then add a sandbag. So that could be either at the leg top, it could be at the ribs. You might sense that if you have the sand at the legs, it's helpful for the experience of the length in the torso. And so we want this arena in the mid body to feel like it's elongating. Now, as you let the arms just get that sensation of open, then you can start to tinker with this blanket and towel setup. So I added a little kind of like a hand towel today. And you might end up using your blanket that's there already, and you can kind of roll that up at the neck. And it still might feel like your neck is about the same experience, even with a rolled up towel, but it does fill up that gap so you can take ease in your neck, okay? And some of you might decide, well, I don't want quite that much stuffiness, so I'm just gonna place my towel underneath, right? You know when we do brain float, that occipital space, right? That brain shelf, that's kind of where you're pulling, you have your towel at that space to give a little reminder of length. So think of it as brain float. Okay. Yeah, once you get engaged with getting that support, you can kind of take off on a tangent, but just let it accept where it's at and be okay with that. Take a hold of your belt. And then once you're experiencing reaching onto that belt, I want you to slide your hands out on that and let the elbows touch the ground. So if that's possible for you to have your elbows down, you're amazing, right? So many of us may find, well, I can get my elbows down. Some of us, that is not possible. We're really restricted there. And if that's happening, you might want to slide back further from the bolster, okay? Because I'm quite high up on the bolster, meaning much of my spine is on the bolster except my neck. And of course, my very top ledge of the shoulder is tilting off the bolster. So relax your eyes and settle into the freedom of breathing, just the freedom of it. There's no regulation right now. You're just experiencing breathing through the nose and out through the mouth. Swallowing, clearing the pathway for slowing down, which might be partially just processing, relaxing your mouth, your speaker button, and just letting yourself soften into the shape. The feet can be pretty passive. It's not helpful probably to regulate, forcing them to flex. This is why we have the blanket, so that the feet kind of go in that notch, and then you have some ease to feel that you're supported by the props and they're giving you the opportunity to settle and trust that the position of the props helps your pose. So feeling the movement of the breath, the freedom of the breath. And feel the length through the front body. And now if you notice how the muscles in the arms are holding onto that belt a little bit, you can use this belt awareness holding to get the field of circulation through the muscular chest, right, where there's muscles in that, the connection to the arms. And then take a breath when you feel that you're holding the belt, notice, and the exhale, that means a round of breath. And then release your grip entirely, let your hands be wherever it's comfortable. And feel your breath now. Notice if you can feel it in that area of the body, even along the arms that we're pulling, just the circulation centering. Okay, so this is important and valuable that we have this opening of the chest, and it's kind of a preparation for the inversions that we're going to go into. This has the quality of an inversion. It's a bridge pose, so it's a mild as far as how upside down you are, but it's not completely. But we're getting set up for that. Okay, so if you have a towel underneath, you're going to slide that out. Okay, who knows if we might use that again. And now you might notice, wow, there is a little gap. That was maybe helpful. So you can use that. I guess you could do it pretty much any pose that would be helpful on your back would be recommended. If it feels like it's supportive for your neck, just add that on. But now as you slide your sand away, noticing how the abdomen inflates, deflates, and of course that's the diaphragmatic breath focus. Now we're going to be moving the organs so they have a little bit more of this lift. So walk the feet in, and if you can, you step kind of on your bolster. I find this kind of fun because if I push my bolster a little bit, not aggressively, but just push with my feet, it kind of gives a little bit of sensation of arch, okay? Now, when your feet walk down, they don't go down too many floors, it's just a bolster step. You got to push down into your feet. You have to be a little careful here on the wave in the spine. But when you lift up the hips, I want you to reach for your bolster and slide your spine, your head back so you're on the blanket, and turn your bolster so now it's horizontal underneath your back across. You might have a sandbag in the way there. So there's sometimes props that are in your path here. So just kindly nudge them along. And you have your bolster now across your low back, back of pelvis. And then we let the feet pop up, and we might need to do a little bit of zigzag side to side to get the spine warmed up for this opportunity, kind of rocking the knees side to side. But once you've done a few of those without anything between the knees, then you'll get to feel how the ribs, they kind of pronounce different than the last shape. They are lifted, the diaphragm is now having a little bit more workout because you're assigning it to go, with gravity. So we take a sandbag. This is going to feel nice. And then you'll scoop your knees in, and the sand will go on your feet, bottoms of the feet as the leg lift up, the one sandbag. And then have a length through the back of the legs, through the calves. And then last would be the flexing the feet, so you can feel the stretch of the bottom of your feet. Even though that may not be something you have in your mind that the bottom of your foot was stretching, it's probably your calf. The hands could rest in your ribs. They could certainly go out to cactus. Now, if you're really defining your practice, either way is okay. You know, it doesn't have to be the most intense looking position. You can always rest your hands, and that can feel breathing and maybe reinforce that movement of breath. And the legs are vertical, and the exchange of circulation basically steers towards the breathing muscles, strengthening. And you can tinker with sensations in hamstring and calves, but likely it's pretty curious in the low back and pelvis. It may not feel like it's stretching specifically there, but it is. There's quite a bit of warmth that goes into that area. It's the opposite of prolapse. This is a good pose for pelvic floor, bladder, right? It's the opposite of going downwards with gravity. It's going kind of opposite. So inhale for a count of 4 through the nose. Good. And then let your exhalation empty out of the mouth for 5 or 6 counts. Don't strain yourself to get that extra count. Just see what naturally alternates for you. And it could be in equal ratio breath as well. Now, before we shift, we're going to stay inverted, but we'll shift our sand in a moment. But take a few more of these kind of belly breaths focus. And reason being the diaphragmatic strengthening, right, has to go against gravity on the inhale. So the organs actually push to the diaphragm, right? It has to resist that to complete its movement. So really studying that you get the full breath would be helpful. Don't skimp on breathing. And then the exhalation is naturally lengthens because the diaphragm moves with gravity back towards the heart. Okay, now we'll kind of squish around in there. Squishy organs. Okay, so bending through the legs. Feel it's like when you almost kind of test your balance, you bring your feet a little forward, then you use the back muscles of the legs to help you bring the knees in. And take caution that you don't overly compress through the knees. There's no reason that we should do that. So we won't. We'll just let them fold and then come back, kind of rebound. Get a ball. If you don't have a ball, use a block. Place it between the knees. And then I'm going to kind of resist squeezing the ball. I'm just going to have it as a spacer. You might end up pushing into it just, randomly, but don't force that effort of pushing into it. Just let the arms open and bring the knees so they tilt from side to side and explore that range of movement. Let it be kind of random. We'll call it random range. So however it ends up with your distance from side to side, you might find that moving your knees straight over, not trying to touch the ground, but you could go to the side with the knees and move them towards the arm. Kind of a little bit of a scoop, kind of a scoop and loop, right? You kind of scoop up and loop down. Scoop-de-loop. You might think of restorative as being somewhat silly, but this would probably be a good class for silly. What else are you going to have silly? All right. So when you move your knees side to side, your head can go with it. Sometimes it's okay to go to the side the knee goes, the knee pack goes, your knee collaboration. And you can use that not necessarily as staring at it, right? But letting your eyes close, just feeling where the brain tilts, or keep it right in center. Especially if you're using that little towel underneath your neck, you might be centered. It's up to you to use that. Now, when you bring the knees back in center, I'm going to move the knees in towards the chest. Okay, so feel like about 25% squeezing in, so not your maximum, but you kind of put the muscles on alert. Okay, and then you'll remove the ball and bring the right foot to the left knee. Now, this might be something where you have to go down with the feet on the ground and then put the right foot on the left leg and then bring it back in. I don't want you to force this whole knee pressure. So if that works better for you, then go with the comfort. Okay, but the key here is going to be these different options. Many of you know tree pose, right? So you remember standing on one foot, putting a foot to the inside of the leg. So this is a variation really of tree or pigeon pose, both. Pigeons and trees. Okay. So when the knee goes in, the left knee's drawing into you, instead of trying to pull with your hands under that left leg, I want you to try to work with your particular range of, or challenging range of motion is probably the truth. Lower the left foot to the floor, let the right knee move open, and kind of play with these two variations. This would be typical as I would teach this, the knee would go in. That'd be kind of it. But a little bit not as typical for me would be that knee goes out this direction. You try to work with that hip open, the right inner leg. And you could also stretch the left leg down on that blanket if it's still there and let that right leg open. So it's kind of like a half lotus kind of version. But, you know, again, be careful if it doesn't feel good, you're not going to practice that far of a reach with the left leg. Okay. Now, as you work with either of these three versions, right knee in, foot down, or leg lengthens, the right knee is trying to move away from the midline, open out. Okay, now come back with your foot on the floor, and then get a belt. If it was overhead. Okay. Now reach your belt into your right foot and extend through that leg. I know we're always varying these things up. Okay, so hold on to the belt with the right hand and bring the left knee, just let the foot come off the ground. It doesn't have to be all the way to your chest, but as the right leg is guided out to the side, your left knee will kind of go, oh, I gotta go somewhere too. Usually that kind of the pelvis reacts that way. So you hold on to the left knee, however it moves open, doesn't have to go extreme. But I like to feel like using the bolster is a pelvis kind of prop, right? It holds the pelvis from, you falling over. So use that kind of as a shape holder. And then the right leg goes out. It doesn't have to go very far. You might let it go far out, but you might feel this more in the left inner thigh. Who knows? Depends on if you got a wall stuck next to your foot. Then you can't go quite as far. Okay, now right leg goes up, left leg stretches down to that blanket. Hold onto the belt with your left hand. Good. Cross the right leg over to the left. And kind of feel circulation balancing through the hip, right hip. Could feel like a relief from the last few moments of practice with that hip. The leg could be moved, right? Meaning that you could use the hold on the belt to kind of shift it downstream and kind of massage the circulation through the hip. That's kind of fun to do. Well, we know it's entertaining for the circulation in the joint. Maybe it's not fun, but It kind of hydrates that space. Okay, breathing. Okay, bend through that right knee. Come back through center, stretch the right leg straight up, left leg stays down, and then work your way into the calf focus so the hands hold the belt, right? And purposely pull where the belt is under the ball of the foot. So my belt is not very far down on my foot. It's really towards the top curve on the bottom of my foot. Think of that simple, that contour. And you might be able to kind of pull the right hand down a little further so you can kind of manipulate how it stretches the bottom of the foot out to stretch your calf. Okay. Now pull and guide the right leg back towards your chest and let your elbows, they can either move open. This kind of feels nice to spread out the elbows. Just be a little careful that it doesn't tighten up in your shoulders or your shoulders don't creep up to your neck. You don't want creepy shoulders. Yeah, now that I'm on just the blanket, I feel like I missed that little towel. So I might add that in. Okay, so the left foot is passive. You might be trying to do something. But the reason I want you to let it be passive is so it's setting you up for the next hip opener on the left hip. Left leg is kind of just relaxed, it's getting ready. Doesn't know what's next, but the right leg may have let it, give it a little bit of a clue. Bend the right knee. See if you can bend as if you imagine you have a sandbag on the bottom of the right foot and you're going to try to push it straight out. So I want you to imagine that and get that version of the leg pulling with your hands, bending the right knee towards the shoulder. I know it's not going to touch your right shoulder, but that's a goal here. And then we slip out the belt and we lower the right foot and the left foot crosses up to the right knee. That's kind of a new sequencing we're just playing with today. But you have 3 versions of this one. Knee can go in, just see if you can resist holding the right leg. If you need to hold it and it feels just so much better, then you be the teacher on that one. Okay, that's fine. You're ultimately the decider on this, on what you're going to do. But as your foot goes maybe down on the ground, this is interesting for the hip. And if the right leg stretches down. Yeah, I was practicing this in a class online yesterday, and I felt like it was a pretty safe way to go, especially when you're on the bolster. It does add some element of sensation here in the pelvis to stretch, right? To get a baseline stretch here. Of course, it can go farther to like a lotus pose, but I don't entertain that for my knee. So this is my maximum range. And you can go back to the foot on the ground, the knee releasing open, or the leg back in. And if you like to hold the leg, that's okay. It's just not the version I'm instructing right now. Okay, so let's start to motion. If your leg is down, you're going to walk it back in. You're going to get a hold of your belt and bring your knee in and reach the belt under your left foot and let the left leg go out and the right hand hold that right knee. Okay, I know my foot's in the screen now. But when you have that design of movement, okay, you have to be a little careful not to try to push the leg too far downwards or yank the leg. So really find what's balancing for you, even if your foot is in the screen. Don't worry about it. See if you can let that go so you don't push it in a direction that wouldn't be favorable for the joint. Just be a little cautious on that. Really, you can enjoy your practice. Feel a sense of information on the leg, right? Information of sensation circulating through the inner leg. And now as the right leg goes down, you assist that left leg, although it kind of goes on its own, doesn't it? Sometimes the leg does the movement, not the hand. And then you'll grab the belt with the right hand, cross over so the left arm opens and the right leg crosses to the just over the other side. Yeah, right foot is resting on the blanket. I like having this unusual treat that there's a blanket under my foot, right on the ankle area. It's a nice traction piece. Yeah, you could feel the nerves all the way through that, sciatic area on this one. So you might go, oh, piriformis, feeling very, very isolated sensations through that upper outer left leg. So kind of play with that for a few more moments. Find a stillness with it. Deep breath. Bend the left knee. Hold the belt firm so there's resistance. And then as you bring the leg back up, straight towards the ceiling with the foot, you'll get a hold of your belt with the other hand as well. Flex so that the belt is to the ball of the foot. And the other side has had its experience. So if you're letting the foot really flop out, maybe this time you could walk your right foot in and feel the bottom of the foot on the ground so you get some nice solid support in the pelvis. Because the other side, we were getting it ready for that hip opener. So the foot was kind of anywhere. Rotated out, suit relaxed. Now we're gonna kind of prep for the next segment. Who knows? Who knows what that's gonna be? Maybe none of us. Okay. So when you feel the flex of the foot, then begin to move the leg. Circulation up the back of the leg into the hamstring. Pull. Right, the leg goes to your chest. And then as you move that left leg back up, bend the knee, put the right foot up into the belt too, and then just push both feet out, but use the hands holding the belt if possible. Okay, and so that you do have a limited range that way with the hands holding. If it's really unpleasant for your hands, right, they hurt with this, then buckle up the belt so it's connected. That's okay. And then make sure there's just a big loop. That's fine. If you want to do that, buckle up and then you have the feet out. That's okay. I don't want your fingers to completely be upset about the situation because that can happen. So when your feet push out or you're holding on, sense the movement of the whole sphere of the leg, right from the ankle up to the hip, because we spend most of the day standing on our feet or sitting with our feet below us, not this version. It's just nice to have spent enough time reversing the flow of gravity to the heart, to the vital organs, right? They get a little bit of a massage here, turning them upside down, shifting. Okay, so as you bend the knees, whether you're holding your belt or now you get a hold of it, slide your feet together. And then as they draw into your chest, take off the belt, and knees will keep going side to side for a few more moments. This is just a nice way to soothe the back, to get the proper kind of release work to get out of the shape. Let the knees now roll their weight to the left, and then you'll move your shoulders, the left shoulder over to left as well. Hand on the right side comes down, and you bring your feet down and slide down towards your feet on the bolster. And now we're going to set up for side sage. Okay, so the blanket at the base, it's tempting to keep it there under my feet, but I need it, or under my head. So I'm going to take that blanket from the feet, put it back overhead to the other blanket. So we got a blanket set. I have favored having my top blanket a little higher. So I'm going to go with that improvement for my neck. Not everyone requires that. Some of you are fine with the blankets flat. And then we add a block overhead. Yeah, just add those goodies. Get your sand. I mean, I suppose I could use my towel under my head, but I don't think it's going to add that much. Okay. So add your ball on the inside of the right leg. It doesn't have to be knee. It could be the actual upper inner thigh. And then have a sandbag to the side. And the side would be your hip. It could be your waist. So as you lean in, you want to make sure this bolster is pretty snug, closest to the leg as it can go. And then you have more circulation up through the waist. Okay. So I like the focus on the weight bearing for my hip. I like to keep that improving. So I'm going to have that as my focus for my sand, but you might enjoy having it on the side too. Okay. So relax your right foot. If it's sliding back or if it's efforting, you know, you might want your knees stacked like a fetal position, or you might kind of work a little bit with moving this right leg farther back. Yeah, let's try to make it so we can feel that there's a sensation through the right side, even though the circulation is helping out your organs on the left side, right? The pressure. So breathing through the ribs. Inhale to exhale. And just feel how that waist expands, and maybe it tries to turn towards the ceiling a little bit. Brain is relaxed. Let the weight of your head and your neck be supported, so you're not even slightly trying to hold up your head. Make sure there's enough blanket under your head that you can relax your head. And just let the body lower the pose. Breathing deep. Exhaling slowly. Okay, so now as we've had this experience with this right side sensations, right through the side. So we're gonna kind of get a feeling of what that element is like when we're seated down to the root, which would be the hip, and then into the trial of being upright, not uptight, but upright. So this should give you kind of a little bit of fluffing out the middle, you know, kind of move and span it, expand it. But now as we let the body weight roll a little to the left, you're going to slide your sand maybe off first, and then roll to the left, and then kind of feel, what we're going to work with is seated on the bolster, but I want you to kind of feel how your waist pushes down, and then how you use your arms to get up, but then you're sort of, not that you're lifeless in the middle, but it's interesting what muscles we use to kind of help ourselves, you know, move upright in our seated shape. Probably our spine and all the paraspinals do a lot of this, but take a cross-legged position on your bolster. And I want you to have, let's see what leg I want you to have forward. I want you to have the left leg forward, cross-legged, and then have a sandbag on the, I think the proper way to go is we're going to have to move it on both sides. So we're first going to have it on the left side. Even if you have two sandbags, let's just use one for this. Sandbag on the left leg is crossing forward to the right. And then you got, get your blocks. always a prop need. Get 2 blocks, place them in front of your left leg. If you can, if it's too much to lean that far forward, then you have them on the sides. Right, they're out to the sides of your knees. There's no problem with this. I find this helpful. I need my ball sometimes under my right knee. This is like a nice little stuffer under the knee. You might like that, you might not. But when you have your blocks supporting you, you're going to start to move forward, lean forward. Let it be leaning. So make sure you're enough on your bolster. You're not kind of sliding off of the edge. You might have to kind of nudge your hips back. And then when you're front, if your left knee is not happy with this, you can put a ball under that knee as well. Probably your right leg is going to lower down. Okay. This is the same pose as we were doing on our back with our foot crossed, right? But we just don't have our foot on our knee. But it's similar with its angle in the hip. But it feels different when I'm sitting in it than I'm laying back in it. So, kind of tip your focus forward here. Your spine could be extending. You don't have to be in a deep rounded back, but work with that length out of your low back. It's kind of hard to decipher, I think, that explanation of length. And I think sometimes we flex our spine around it, thinking that's lengthening, but you're trying to get some reach in the front of the spine. Okay, now come back with maybe you need a block, you might need one. You're going to take your sand to the right thigh, okay? Cross the left leg over the right leg, that left knee points up. Okay, get a feel of your leg part from the hip to the knee. If it doesn't feel like a stretch, fine. It's just kind of a holding place right now for your arm position. So reach your left hand back. Maybe the blanket is enough. Maybe you need your block. Right arm to the left leg and twist to your left. Good, so use that right arm purposely to that left leg, yep. And then when you rotate, you want to get a feel of the ribs turning. Right, it's a squishy feeling in the core, but you're rotating. And the spine, if you were to like stare down your spine, it's probably like a rung. It's like probably still tall. It's probably extending up versus what you might think of as wrapping around. It's your ribs that are wrapping around here to the left. So if you want to let your eyes close, kind of measure the sensation. That right arm is pressing into that left leg a little bit. And maybe actually a lot if you start to calculate the shoulder design here. Yeah, you can really feel the weight bearing or the resistance work we do with our sessions in this kind of pose. Okay, now as you're working with the breath, of course, all the time, but necessarily design that pressure, you're going to unwind. And let's take a counter twist because we're already here with the knee this way. So we might as well just stay with that leg pattern the same. Left arm on the kind of inner band of the left knee, right? So it's not on my patella, it's on that inner band. And then I rotate. You still call it a knee, even if it's not that hard cap at the top. So rotate to the right. If your right shoulder looks like it's kind of dropping in, yeah, just relax your opinion and see if you can just move it a little bit back. That's what I got to work on. Relax my opinion. Turn the ribs to the right. Okay, release back forward. Okay. Yep, you'll need both blocks in the front. Okay, so now as you uncross, you're going to bring your feet together, knees out, what we've known as cobbler's pose, feet together, knees out. Place your sand on your feet. And if you need to scoot your feet forward because it hurts your knees, then you scoot your feet forward. If you start to feel any of this kind of medial pressure, on the inner side of the knee, then you push them this way, away from your center. If you pull the feet in, you know, it feels like it's kind of a deeper pressure for some of us on the inner thigh when they go closer to the core. You might feel success from that, but I want you to notice, how does the spine settle into the pelvis there? I feel like it's a little harder for me to feel my spine settle than if my feet are closer, but I don't want you to strain your knees too much here. How much, right? Is that enough? All right, so interlace your fingers at the roots of the hands into pushing the palms inside out, forward and then up. Simple, you're trying to let the knees release open. I know they're gonna wanna move up. Why this is called butterfly pose, they're gonna try to flap, but try to keep them open. It's hard to remove that idea of butterfly, isn't it? Okay, now arms spread out and back. Okay, try to let the shoulders motion back. Inhale, shoulders up. Exhale, down for 2. You probably remember that breath from class. Inhale, shoulders up. Down for 2. I know the knees almost go up too. Now, as we change sides, you're going to bring that left foot in, the right foot crossed in front of the left knee, sandbag on the right thigh. I haven't forgotten we have to do side sage on the other side. It has not been left out in my brain. Maybe it still could be. Okay, so sand is on the right thigh. And then I have to be careful because I slid a little forward on my bolster. So I'm going to come back. So I'm properly up. And then I'm going to work on leaning forward to the blocks. Okay. Now, if you need a ball under the right knee, this is fine. You can even use a little tiny particles of it. It can be nice and supportive. But I am trying to get my left knee down. And then as I lean forward, circulation through the lower back, through the arms reaching. Feel that natural arch. Breathe. Okay, and you might let your head tilt a little bit just so you're comfortable in your neck. Maybe close your eyes. Okay, now as you walk the hands back, take a block with you. Hands to the legs, and then as you come up through the back muscles, right, this is how you really respond to lift. And when we get to all fours today, I'm going to resist doing some of those back strengtheners so you can feel that working them here, like you're trying to resist to come back and up. Strengthen, move the sand over, cross the right foot, and then take that block back and go to the twist to the right side. Yeah, we'll just go immediately into it. So, you know, as the direction of the hips go, they stay open. So just to take a seated twist really does require a certain openness in our hips, doesn't it? So you'll find this can be, you know, when you begin practice, this can be really difficult. Now, if my hand is high up, my shoulders pulling in, then the block is it's unnecessary. For some people, this is not going to be used. You'll be here. Okay. I actually like the firmness of it. I kind of push into it, then I rebound up the spine. It works pretty good for me. Okay, I know some of the rules of the spine. You know, I'm not trying to go to rounding, working on lifting. Okay, and that right knee, if it's moving away, you're trying to get it into the center and use the left arm on the other side of the leg. That'll strengthen all the way, kind of a zipper up into that right hip and then that right side of the spine. Hip zip. Turn to the left, so just same idea with the base. Maybe move the block, maybe not, and then rotate to that left side. And yes, feel where that right arm is touching to the right leg. If you kind of kick out of it, like your foot swings forward, just, kindly remind it to come back to the ground, bottom of the foot down. Kind of a neutral twist is fine. Breathing through the nose, belly full, exhale out of the mouth. Turn forward, okay? And take off the sand. This way we're already on kind of this direction. So my right foot takes steps out, I shift my sand, and then I slide the left foot forward, both feet. And as I lean forward, I'm going to keep that awareness through the hamstrings for a mini moment here. And then push onto the bolster and slide my hips down, and then start to twist to the right, to the side sage with the right hip down. Okay, so you probably have some kind of a setup that you're used to for this, but the left leg has a ball on the inside. We've got a bolster under the ribs, and then we set over. So we reach down with our right side of our head on the blanket, and then our hand maybe on the overhead. Now, of course, missing sand. To the left hip or to the waist. Yeah, but the resistance or weight bearing on the waist is not going to be the same as the hip, although it's going to help the breathing. So, I think most of us want some hip, the density, the resistance, the weight is a plus. So it's not a lot to ask to put that sand there unless it's difficult in your back, then you would put it to the ribs. But, give it a try what works for you today in this moment. And then try to reach through the left arm. If that's a strain, let the left arm be open. You can also relax that left hand down on the bolster. And it's okay to just close the eyes and breathe with a peaceful focus on slow, deep breathing. Okay, now when you feel the body weight kind of leaning into that right side, the weight bearing, kind of the churning, the rotation in the core. Can you emphasize the breathing in the ribs that keep that motion in the rib cage? That expansion and centering. Relax your head into the blankets. That's important. Okay, so now we're going to slide the sand off. And since we've had this kind of the gist of the movement in the ribs with the breath, now instead of this just kind of isolated zone, although I feel like this is a little easier to get my rib focus with breath when I'm lying on my side, now we're going to work with it with our hands underneath our shoulders. So you'll guide your right leg and left leg towards each other. And then when you kind of shift your body weight, let's take our bolster towards the side of our mat. So just kind of off to the edge. And then your blanket, this might be a little bit interesting to get this exact setup, but let's take it so we have our bolster to the side, our blanket under the knees, and you got a couple blocks. Let's see. Okay, so you got your hands and knees pattern. So we are going to be adding the bolster pretty soon, so don't push it too far out of town. All right, so hands, knees, shoulders shifting. Okay. Now they do kind of fall forward, don't they, your shoulders? I mean, how could you not with your body in the shape? So when you move your hips back, it stretches them out. So I want you to work your way towards hands as wide as the mat, and then shift your hips down to the floor and let the spine naturally arch. Lift the head downwards, and then reach your hips back. Some of you might be really comfortable with this angle on the knees. Some are going to find this is too far back. So probably you can use the position of up dog when you go forward now. Most people, this is okay on the knees. It's when you hinge and you fold at the joint and then you put pressure. So when you lean back, just try to hook the toes under. Take the hands so they're on the mat. They're not on the edges of it. They're not off the mat. And lift up your knees. Make sure that they're still bending though. Of course, they had to get there by that experience, so they can probably fall back into it. Like you look like you're gonna kind of jump, okay? But keep the movement of the hips back and up, so you're exploring moving to downward dog. And get a feel where the brain is between the arms, great, and get a feel of the hips lifted. Breathe slow. Okay, now lower down the knees, get a bolster, cross the front of your mat. Okay, I find it easier for me to have something under my head for this. So the blanket works great because it's different heights, right? You can make it flat, you can bring it higher. The other items are one size. Okay, you can't make them different sizes. So the hands are on the bolster and my head goes down to the blanket. Now, if you feel like in your neck, this is too much, you can put the blanket a little bit higher, and that might feel better for some of you in your neck. The challenge though with the blanket when you fold it is that part of it will be folded, a little higher density than the other. So you have to find where your head can settle in. Even though it's a small piece, it's affected if one side's higher than the other on the blanket. Okay. So spend some moments stretching your upper back quite a bit, your chest opening, make sure the blanket's not too high, not too low under your head. Breathing. This is pretty much like a down dog with the chest muscles. If you could get down dog pose this open, but it's partially our flexibility in our legs, right, that prevents that. Okay, so get a feel here. All right, now as you come back up, you're going to slide the blanket away and we're going to step the right foot forward. Now, if you need your blocks, just use them, okay? So I find if I'm here in the lunge and I'm going to lift up my back knee and stretch forward and down with my back leg straight, trying to straighten it at least, my heel is close. And I use just my bolster for my prop. This might be too low. For some of you, you might find, I need my blocks and my bolster. I need them all. That feels pretty good. I like that. Now I get my leg straight down. Okay. So you decide if the blocks go on. Usually they don't fall off. You can kind of mush them down and they're flat, not the highest height on the blocks. But extend the right leg. See if you can straighten out through the right leg. Now you're perched forward with your arms quite a bit. It's quite the tilt, isn't it? The right thigh is lengthening. You're trying to create length in both legs or straight. They're on two different lines of travel, right? Two different tracks. Okay. And if you're tempted to bring your foot up on the bolster to stretch your calf, I can imagine that's an obvious opportunity, but I'm going to keep it real focused here with the calf, left calf. Hope you feel that. Bend to the right knee. We're going to go to the bolster with the back foot. So step the foot forward. No, not going over the bolster. Take the feet to the hips distance, and then let your forward bend be experienced by either hands on the blocks. This can be really helpful for some people's legs and back muscles. You can also go a little farther forward and not put your hands on anything and hold your elbows and let your head release down. You choose blocks or elbows. It's one or the other. And just get a feel where the weight is on the roots of the toes here. Okay, now relax your grip on the elbows, release down, bend your knees, and then bring your hands up onto the blocks, step the right foot back, and then working the same version, although this time we start with an advantage because we're already up, right? We didn't have to launch into it. So the legs might be a little bit tempted to be warmed up on the second side, but your calf has a new opportunity on the right leg to stretch back. And calves can use this. You know, the feet get stepped on so much that the lower part of that leg gets a little stiff. And so as you work your way through it, if the heel is up, that's okay. There's a couple of things you could modify to work on the calf, right? You could put your blanket under your heel. That's one thing you could do to get the heel to gradually stretch the calf out further. That's one idea. But sometimes accepting that it's up a little bit is okay and work towards it. Okay, but feel when you push in towards that bolster. Maybe you're not using the blocks. Maybe your hands are on the bolster. I'm getting used to the blocks now. I don't want to graduate. Okay, now get a feel if the left knee is bending a lot. It might be. You might really have a bent left leg and not know any different. So straighten it out. See if you can lengthen that leg. Maybe you could tell yourself to, but it doesn't. So you just do the best you can anyway. Good backup plan. Okay, lower down the back knee. Now we get back to that lunge. And then we're going to shift body weight back. So use I think we're going to need our blocks here coming up. We're going to use the bolster under our feet. So be kind of, how are we going to get there? Walk your left foot over to the right side. So toe heel, like you're going into pigeon. Left knee moves down. You tilt your foot towards your groin, so right in, and then sit to the blanket, and then swing the right leg forward, and back we go. We got our bolster under our feet now. Isn't that great? We got our blanket underneath our back area. And I think if you got a lot of clutter on the side of your mat, mine usually accumulates over here because it's not closer to the screen, but I would put your blanket to the back area. Let's see, you're going to need your sand, but you want space that's from your hips to the side all the way. Okay, so got blocks, got ball. Gonna lower onto the back so my knees are pointing up and I've got a ball between the knees. Okay, so hands have a sense of touching to the top of the thighs, and you might really help yourself out by feeling the full palm. I know it curves around the leg, but just kind of feel the whole hand. And then push down into your feet and lift up the hips and let the arms stretch back. But your eyes may be closed. You had to keep them awake so you didn't fall over for a while. And then exhale, spine lowers down, arms besides you. Okay, feel the natural arch in the spine. Inhale, push into the feet, lift the hips up and bring the arms back overhead. Exhale, lower the spine. And then the arms go last, don't they? I don't think I've ever known anyone that the arms move down faster than the spine. You could be the first. Take it about one more time with the ball. And this time when you get the hips to lift, remember we're not trying to be, do it too much efforting, but you want to get a feel of pushing down to your feet, lifting up through the hips. And it might feel like it's the legs that do 99.9% of the effort here versus your hips. Okay? So if you have the ball, I want you to leave it there. So if you have it, just leave it. If you don't have a ball, well, if you have a block, you remove it. And then you'll take a block. And I think most of us have a couple, so I'm going to teach this with two. You're going to have your blocks. You're going to have them at the second height besides your hips. And then you have to get a little bit of ambition. You've got to lift up your hips to slide the blocks in so they're under really just the pelvis and tiny bit below back. Actually quite a bit. They're just not at your ribs at all. So I don't want them to be pushing it all into your rib cage. And then take some time to kind of settle where the body weight is on the props. If this is too high, you can turn the blocks lower. Okay, that might work fine. But try to squeeze into the ball if you have that. Just the right amount. So this is a good time to figure out your intensity with these shapes. So we'll spend just a few moments with the ball remaining. At some point, we're going to try to get rid of that. And then once that spine settles, I want you to use the hands down besides, so they're reaching towards the bolster. Okay. Neck lengthens. Be careful that you have the blanket supporting you. And then bring the knees up, the feet up, that is, as well. And remove the ball. And as your legs are lifting, you've been in this position today, right? Earlier in class, kind of smooths out the lower back. It kind of lengthens it a little. Lower your feet back down to the bolster, okay? And feel the shoulders press down about 40% so they shift back. Yep, and then simply deep breath, belly full. Exhale completely, empty the lungs. Inhale, belly full. And exhale completely. Now feel where there's the hinges and the hips, the little bit of kind of arch through the hip. Push down into your feet. And then as you scoop, try to scoop the tailbone under or visualize that and that lift in the hips. And then slide the block out. You got two, so blocks. And then as you lower down the spine, have your feet still on the bolster. They stay pushing. Hands are going to open out. And then feet a little wider than hips distance on the bolster. Knees are going to swing side to side. And you're going to let the legs just swish side to side. It's not just a knee movement, but it's actually massaging from the back of the pelvis into the hip. So it's kind of a zigzag motion side to side. Yeah, just feel that range through the hip. Notice the movement in the waist if it's pretty shallow. And then when the knees go back in center, just kick the bolster to the right side of your mat, off the mat, and let the right leg stretch down and cross the left leg just casually to the bolster. Sometimes being very easeful, flowing, not specific, like knee bend, pull, yank. You just want to be easeful and put the ball to the sacrum. And then add your sandbag to the outer left leg. just the sand. Yeah, if the ball becomes less supportive, you might need to kind of nudge it there so it supports your process of the knee moving to the right side, the left leg. Stretch open the left arm and let your head roll a little to the left. Now this might be a good one to have that towel. To be honest, I think this would be a good towel supportive. To kind of place it how you feel it would be comfortable at your neck. I'm gonna play with it, see if it's helpful or not. It might be a bad idea. You want space at the neck, but you don't want it to be jammed up so much. So maybe our old school method is better. Let your eyes close. Feel breath. It turns back center. Move the sand. Move the ball. And bring that leg back towards midline. And as you move your feet to step down, and you can kind of feel the low back center, like you're pushing into your feet and you're like pre-lifting your hips. So you lengthen down that low back frame. Let the legs both stretch straight up, hands besides the hips, palms down. Flex your feet, legs are in that vertical zone, and then keep the spine centered, and you'll feel maybe the lowest discs kind of lift up a little bit, but I want you to keep the pelvis pressing and move the feet a little forward to 90 degrees to maybe 60. It doesn't need to be a lot of pulse through the abdomen. And then try to let the legs straighten as they go straight back up. So back to 90 degrees. Inhale, belly full. And exhale, shift back forward. So you can kind of get a feel for the muscle tango in the rib cage. And then bring the legs straight back up. Okay, bend the knees. And then reach for your bolster and see if you can swing it over to that other side of the mat. And as your left leg stretches down, your casual right leg swings over the bolster. You might be tilting on your hip, use the ball, the sand, and the movement of that right arm out after you place that sand on the exterior thigh. Then kind of get a feel for personalizing, customizing your sand support. You've probably become used to using this on your own now. And you get a feel of how the waist, not just the chest, but below the chest, the waist kind of twists here. Arm is out to the right, head rolls to the right. Yeah, your left hand could be wherever it's comfortable right now. It doesn't have to be on you. Could be just right beside you. Could even be resting. Eyes relaxed. Belly moves with the breath. Now finally, how that right leg is crossing. Notice if you can kind of imagine there's like a pointer at that knee and it's aiming to the left. So you put a little energy into it. It kind of takes you off of the ball a tiny bit. Very small. Micro motion. And then move the ball and the sand. And place the body to roll to the left, come up, and then get your blocks and let's stack them up so that you have a couple props underneath your bolster. So 2 blocks mid-height, bolster up across, blanket on top. If you're feeling like you need some warmth, you could wrap the blanket around your legs, kind of swaddle. And the swaddle might feel really nice as well, but some of us are very comfortable, legs on top of the blanket, but scoot yourself enough forward so that when you lower onto your back, this blanket could be right at the center of things in the neck. So you might take a little roll of the blanket. Play with that. Get that space. That feels really good now. Didn't feel that good earlier in my neck, but that's right this time. And then I add the sand across the ribs. So it's like you got a little bit of a curve that you're creating with the sandbag across the ribs, this contour. All right, hands are relaxed beside you, palms are open, gently curled, of course. And if you're cold, right, you can just put more blankets on, get all your cozies, your socks, wherever you need, and return the breath. So the emphasis is inward on and exhale, letting go. Feel the shoulders resting, feel the chest opening. And just returning the body to a state of balance through simple, focused breathing. And just notice a basic realm through breathing slow and deep and letting the body respond in the present. Feel the feet floating. It's going to be quite helpful. So keep the feet in that floating perspective so that the draining in the legs can continue. So you're not trying to effort or circle them. They just release. Just letting go. Now as you slide the sand away, stretch your arms back overhead. Bring both hands so they unite, interlace the fingers, turn the palms inside out, straight back. And feel where the arms are reacting into the hands. And then you're going to bring one knee at a time in towards your chest. Use your hands to pull and help the knees come in and be supported. So you can feel that band of sensation across the back. And rock a little side to side, kind of like the windshield wiper idea, but now it's the back wipers. all the way into the back, not just the legs, mostly back and hip. Okay, now roll to one side and hands come up. Use your blanket to sit onto and take a mini moment here to connect to the collaborative simplicity of practicing together. Bring your hands up to your heart center and surrendering here, bowing into the space behind your heart. Inhale and exhale. Namaste. Thank you.